This is part 1 of the video on vector properties. So we are going to start by doing an investigation to look at some of the properties of vectors. Our hope is to try to find some shorter form ways of adding, subtracting, multiplying with vectors where we don't have to draw them out all the time. But in order to do that, we need to draw them out so that we can see what happens. So up at the top, we have a bit of a legend here. I have vector A, which is 2 squares tall and 1 square over. We have vector B, which is going down 2 squares and over 2 squares. Vector C is going straight down 2 squares. And then a 0 vector, we discussed at the very end of our lesson yesterday that a 0 vector has no magnitude and no direction. So I just drew a point to use as our 0 vector. So we're going to try a couple of properties. We're going to try to see whether they are true or false, and we're going to do that by drawing what the property is it's giving us to see whether or not it is true. So I have vector A plus 0 equals vector A. That's what we want to try to figure out. So I know from above what vector A is supposed to look like, so I am going to pick a spot and draw vector A. So vector A goes 2 up and 1 over. So there is vector A. And then the 0 vector is just a point. Okay. And then my resultant vector is supposed to go from where we started, so the beginning of A, to where we ended, which is our 0 vector, which is this vector right here. Is that vector the same as vector A? Yes, it looks exactly the same. So I'm going to say this is true. So the property that if you take a vector and add 0 still equals the vector, which makes sense if I think about it just in terms of a regular calculation. 5 plus 0 is 5. Right? We didn't know for sure with vectors it might not have been the same, but it is, right? If you take something and you add 0, you just get the original amount back. All right, let's try the next one. I have A minus A equals 0. So vector A, take away vector A equals 0. So I'm going to start with vector A. So I'm going to draw maybe here, right? It goes 2 up and 1 over. There is vector A. And then we are subtracting vector A. Now we said yesterday that when you subtract a vector, it goes the opposite direction. So we need to have A go the opposite direction. And when we add and subtract, we are always lining things up head to tail. So I need to start at the end of the first vector, and we are going to draw our vector going backwards in the opposite direction. Like that. And then I need to look at my resultant. So my resultant should go from where I started to where I ended. And I started and I ended in the exact same spot, which means it is just the 0 vector, right? There's no magnitude there. There's no direction. We ended in the same spot we started in. So that is also true. All right, let's try the next one. I have vector A plus B is the same thing as vector B plus A. I'm going to have to draw 2 different pictures here, so I need to kind of leave some space. I'm going to try to do one a little further over. I notice that A is going up and B is going down. So I'm going to start maybe over this way with vector A. It is 2 up, 1 over. There is vector A. And then to that, we are adding vector B. So we want to start where we ended. And this one goes 2 squares down, 2 squares over. So it would put me over here. There's my vector B. Line them up head to tail. Oops, that's a B, not an A. I have no idea what I just wrote. Let's try this again. There we go. And then my resultant starts where we started and ends where we ended. So this would be A plus B. Okay, and then I need to try it again, but doing B first and then adding A and then seeing whether we get the same thing. So I'm going to start with B first. Let's do B first, which goes 2 down, 2 over. There's B. And then to that we are adding A. A goes 2 squares up, 1 square over. It needs to start where we ended off here. Okay, and then I draw in my resultant from where we started to where I finished. So I started at the beginning of B, we finished at the end of A, and that was B plus A. So the question is, are those the same thing? So this is higher than this one, but that's just where I drew it on the page. What I am interested in is how long it is and what direction it's pointing in. So this is 1, 2, 3 squares long, and it is pointing to the right. This one is 1, 2, 3 squares long, and it is pointing directly to the right. So are they the same vector? This one is up higher, but that's just because of where I drew B and A to start. So the answer is yes. They have the same magnitude. They're 3 squares long, and they're pointing in the same direction. So they are the same thing. All right, let's try A minus B equals B minus A. So I'm going to start with vector A. I'm going to have to draw 2 of them, but I also have to subtract. So I need to be careful about how close I put it to the edge. I think I might start, we'll start here. There's vector A. And B goes 2 down, 2 over. But we have to go the opposite direction, so we're going to go 2 up, 2 over the other way, because when we subtract, we do the opposite. That was what we talked about yesterday. So this is negative B, right? A minus B. And if I draw in my resultant, it starts at A, it ends at the end of B, and that is A minus B. Okay, and then we are going to try doing B take away A. So I'm going to start with B. Let's start here. So B goes 2 down, 2 over. And then we need to take away A. So A was going 2 up, 2, 1 over. So now this is going to go 2 down, 1 over. So this is negative A. And then if I draw in my resultant, it starts at the beginning of B and ends at the end of A. This is B minus A. Okay, are they the same thing? So they aren't in the same spot, but that's just based on where I drew them. What I'm interested in is magnitude and direction. So if I think about the length of this one, it is 1 square over and 1, 2, 3, 4 squares up. This is 1 square over, 1, 2, 3, 4 squares up. So if I use Pythagorean theorem, right, it's 1 and 4, so we're going to get the same side lengths. The problem is they're not pointing in the same direction. This one's pointing up, this one is pointing down. So they have the same magnitude, but they don't have the same direction. So these ones are false. Okay, so just to recap the first page and the properties we looked at, if you take a vector and you add 0, you just get the vector. If you subtract a vector from itself, you get 0, which makes sense. A plus B is the same as B plus A, but A minus B is not the same thing as B minus A. And if you think about that in terms of algebra, right, the minus really should go with the B, so it should be negative B plus A if I think about it in terms of algebra. All right, we have 2 more properties to go, but we will do those in the next video, and then we will try some examples.